Started. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our listening session with Congresswoman Sharice Davids. First, I want to thank Representative Davids on behalf of the Chamber for her great support of advocating for Families First Coronavirus Response Act and the CARES Act. I've had the opportunity to join several of her town hall meetings where she hosted expert guest speakers throughout this pandemic, and I have to say that both she and her team have been wonderful advocates for this region and for her constituents, as well as the many businesses who needed rapid response. So Representative Davids, I want to thank you very much for what you've done for us during this pandemic and during this crisis, but also for what you've done for us advocating for our primary agenda the rest of the time. And of course, you won't be surprised that I'll mention expansion of US 69 because I can never miss an opportunity to do that as part of our standing priorities. Before we dive into today's program, I want to thank our corporate partners, corporate sponsors, and leadership circle members who you see on the screen. They're the ones who help us make the Chamber's vision possible, which is to make Overland Park prosper. These are certainly no doubt very trying times. But our vision for each and every one of you and your businesses and our community is that we do prosper, and that has not changed. We thank especially today's sponsor of this event, FNBO, First National Bank of Omaha. And thank you again to Congresswoman Davids and your entire team for what you do and for joining us today on this call. We know that you could be Zooming literally probably every minute of the day, and we appreciate you taking the time for us. Now I'm going to turn it over to our Senior Vice President of Advocacy, Kevin Walker, to get us started with the program. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Tracy. Good morning, everybody, and a special welcome to Congresswoman Sharice Davids. I don't think she's a stranger to any of you. She has found a way to just, I think, be everywhere all the time, and we certainly appreciate your advocacy on behalf of the 3rd District and the business community in Overland Park and Johnson County. I think you all know that she's in her first term and probably couldn't have had better committee assignments, serving on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which is great for 69 Highway. But with this pandemic and everything that's going on, the fact that she serves on the House Small Business Committee is just an amazing asset for our district to have. So Congresswoman, thank you for your service. Before we turn it over to you for your comments, let me just say, we had some folks that pre-submitted questions, so when the Congresswoman gets finished with her comments, I'll start going through those pre-submitted questions. In the meantime, if you have other things that have come to your mind or new questions, feel free to enter those into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will look for those to come in, and then we'll call on you and ask you to sort of restate your question. Our goal is to make this interactive and personable, so rather than me reading all these, we thought that might be the way to approach it. So with that said, I'm going to turn things over to Congresswoman Davids.
Well, good morning and thank you. Thanks to everyone for having me here today. I also thank you for the introduction, Kevin and Tracy. And I also want to say thank you for following our distancing guidelines and hosting our meeting virtually. I know that we're all still trying to adjust to staying in touch this way. It is extremely important, though, to help slow down the spread of this pandemic. I think, too, it's really important to acknowledge the difficult situation that our community is in, whether we're talking about our schools, our businesses, our nonprofits, workers, our healthcare workers. I know I've been talking to, and for this conversation, I think it's really important to note that I've had a lot of conversations with business owners, small business owners, not so small business owners from all over the district and all manner of different sectors about the devastating impacts that this virus is having on folks' abilities to pay their employees, to keep their businesses afloat, to put food on their tables. And I know we're living in an unprecedented time, but I've been very encouraged to see the ways that folks are stepping up to help each other. And it's the reason that I know that we're going to get through this, because so many people are helping each other right now. And, our community and frankly, our country is resilient. We're a resilient people. And I think that the upcoming days and weeks and months of these challenges are going to be, we're going to see a lot more folks stepping up. And I know our office is going to be here doing what we can in every way we can to help, whether it's with our businesses or workers. Our office is always here. So I want to make sure to mention that we have the Coronavirus Resource Center that we've put up on our website. For folks who don't know who haven't seen it already, it's davids.house.gov/coronavirus. And we're updating it regularly. We're trying to make sure that folks are able to access, whether it's the information they need or the resources that are out there and available. We're trying everything we can to help make sure that folks can get to that stuff easily. So, you can go there, you can find things like the latest public health information from the CDC, our local public health resources, disaster aid information for small business owners, how to access unemployment insurance and food assistance and that sort of thing. So it's davids.house.gov/coronavirus. And then I guess I want to give a bit of an update about the work I've been doing at the federal level before we get into questions. So I have voted now on 4 bipartisan pieces of legislation that provide relief during this coronavirus pandemic. All, like I said, they're all bipartisan, and the president signed all of those bills as soon as they hit his desk. So I think that was a really great sign of my hope that we can continue to see action when we need it. So the first package was an $8.3 billion emergency response package that implemented vital measures for a lot of the healthcare health needs that we needed, but we also included in there around $7 billion for low-cost economic injury disaster loans for small businesses. And then the second bill we passed was the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which also had broad bipartisan support. That bill expanded emergency paid sick leave to approximately 87 million U.S. workers. It also provided eligible full-time employees for an additional 2 weeks of paid time off. So we did that because there are a lot of folks who currently have no paid leave or are being forced to choose between their paychecks, their health, and the health of their family, loved ones, the people around them. The third package was the CARES Act, which now I've gotten so used to saying just CARES Act, but it's the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. I think that's probably the bill that has gotten the most coverage in terms of news, and some of that is because it really was the broadest package that we passed. So, and it was again a bipartisan aimed at economic stimulus. Designed to keep our economy, particularly small businesses, which we're going to get more into, afloat during the face of, just in the face of this unprecedented economic uncertainty. And that bill was certainly far from perfect. I think anything that big is going to miss the mark in some places. But I'll note a couple of the things that I think are really, a few of the things that I think are really big out of that bill. One was the direct payments to folks that started rolling out a couple of weeks ago, and then improvements again, to the unemployment benefits, including an additional $600 per week over the next 4 months for folks who have been furloughed or laid off. We also included the self-employed folks in there and folks who are part of the gig economy. And then there was also a new emergency fund for hospitals across the country to make sure that our doctors, nurses, healthcare workers have the things that they need to stay safe and to keep their patients safe while they fight the pandemic. And then there were also accountability measures that were in the CARES Act to try to put up guardrails to try to protect against waste and fraud and make sure people are getting real relief during this time. And so I want to get into actually some of that, the relief measures that we passed in that bill included the Paycheck Protection Program, which was, aimed at, and Congress's intent was to get the relief directly to our small business owners. And we saw almost immediately that the Paycheck Protection Program was going to run out of funding, and that's exactly what happened. Within weeks of us passing that bill, the PPP, or Paycheck Protection Program, ran out of funding. And even before the funding issue, we also saw an issue of loans not making it into the hands of our small business owners, and also making it into the hands of not so small business owners. Whether it was large chains or, I read that the Lakers were able to secure funding. And when we've got Kansas small business owners calling our office saying that they can't even get someone on the phone with SBA, or that they were turned down from a big bank because they didn't already have an existing credit relationship with that bank. Clearly we've got problems. And so I started pushing very quickly for us to get more funding into the PPP. From both parties. I think that we saw some of the politics at play there at the beginning. And, I certainly was one of the voices calling for our party leadership on both sides of the aisle to put the politics aside and just get more funding to our small business owners, because it was just clear that we needed that right away. And then, I got on a plane last week. I guess it's only been a week. Right now it feels like a day feels like a week, I think, for a lot of folks. But last week I went out to DC to vote on the most recent bipartisan bill that we passed, which did include additional funding for the Paycheck Protection Program. It had additional funding, but it also had more directed funding. So $30 billion of that money was reserved for community-based lenders, small banks, credit unions, and then another $30 billion for like medium-sized banks and credit unions. So I think what we saw previously was that folks who didn't have a relationship with a big bank, that's maybe where they went, because they didn't already know how to access SBA programs. But we do know that our community-based banks, our regional banks, our smaller banks were making PPP loans at a much higher rate than some of the national banks that we saw. In fact, I had a conversation with a couple of folks from regional and community banks, and I think that they were definitely picking up the slack. So we wanted to make sure to get the funding there. The SBA on Monday resumed accepting applications for the Paycheck Protection Program. I want to say PPP, but I also don't want to fall in the trap of in DC everything has an acronym. But the Paycheck Protection Program is back up and going, and the SBA started accepting applications. One of the things that I want to mention is that we know that this is I just think that we need to be thinking also long-term, and I have co-sponsored a bill and been pushing to make sure that we get some more funding into the Paycheck Protection Program, because I do think that that program, you know, the funding is it's gonna run out again, and I want to make sure that we're thinking about what that looks like, because at some point we're going to be on the other side of this thing. And with small businesses really being the backbone of our economy, we have to make sure that we're supporting our small businesses, because you know, half of people who work in the private sector actually work for small businesses, and I think that you know, we will be in a world of hurt if we aren't making sure that our small businesses are able to get back to something that feels normal, and I think the federal government should be supporting that. There was also in the last bill an additional $50 billion for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which is also called EIDL. That makes it so that you know, about $350 billion in loans can be leveraged, and there's also about $10 billion for the EIDL grants. The last couple things I'll touch on, there was also $75 billion in resources for hospitals and frontline workers in this last bill, and $25 billion for testing and a national strategy around testing. I think the key to slowing this down and stopping the spread of the virus and to reopening so much of the economy, it requires that we really significantly increase the amount of testing that we're doing. I'm pushing for our small business owners. I'm pushing to make sure that we get the testing that we're going to need, and I'm also pushing that for us to have the SBA provide additional guidance and transparency around the Paycheck Protection Program, because of the issues that we saw playing out over this last couple of weeks. You know, I had a conversation with the SBA administrator about the issues that have been plaguing this program. I have also just recently pushed the SBA and the Treasury to release the full list of all the companies that have been able to secure Paycheck Protection Program dollars, because I think that transparency is just so clear that it's necessary when we hear about these large chains and companies that are, you know, connected to politicians getting funding. I think that we should have that transparency. And then the widespread testing, you know, I'm going to keep pushing for that too, and the protective equipment, you know, things like gowns and masks and gloves that the folks who are in our hospitals and who are our frontline workers really need those things. You know, I'll close with the fact that the reason I'm pushing for all of this stuff is because I often feel like when I'm out in DC, I'm trying to make sure that my colleagues understand that the economic security of our region of Kansas is vital to the economic security of the entire country, and that this region can't be overlooked. We're seeing that play out on so many different levels right now, whether it's logistics, whether it's our food supply. And one of the things that I think is super important for me is to hear from all of you about your experiences, thoughts and concerns about how these programs have been implemented, and what your priorities are as we go into future, you know, I'll just say CARES packages to be broad about it. But please don't hesitate to reach out to our office if you have questions or concerns. And then I guess I'll close with, I want to be as good a partner at the federal level as I can be for you all. And the best way I can do that is to have conversations with you and hear what's important to you. And with that, we can take take questions.
Well,
This is so funny. This is a funny thing because I have the whole screen up, so it feels like I'm looking at individuals, but I'm actually, yeah.
well, we appreciate you giving that overview of what Congress has done the past couple of months. It's a lot. The amount of money that has been appropriated is staggering, but so is the need. And so, as you mentioned, there may be some problems here and there. And I think some of the folks on the call today might want to talk about their experience in being able to access some of those funds and some of the challenges they had. But I do want to start with a couple of the questions we had that were pre-submitted. And so I'll go through those. And I know people are starting to add some additional, so we're going to get through as many as we can. Do you expect roadway and bridge and infrastructure projects to be, or funding to be part of any future economic stimulus package?
Oh, that's a really good question. And then for anybody who I have not talked to before, I always look for the opportunity to talk about infrastructure. And it's because we need to invest in our infrastructure. I think that investment in our infrastructure, it can address some of the critical impacts and vulnerabilities that our country has. And we see those things playing out in a lot of places right now during this crisis. Things like broadband, which is essential for telemedicine, for teleworking, and remote learning, as we're seeing our kids are going to be going back to in person to school, our community health centers. And then you think about things like clean water, which is obviously vital to our ability to maintain public health and wastewater. So I'm very interested in figuring out ways that we can invest in smarter, safer infrastructure that's resilient and made to last. And I know that I've been working with Chairman DeFazio, and he's also very interested in us making sure that we've got the funding there to invest in infrastructure and looking at ways we can get that included in future packages. And at the same time, we haven't stopped the work that we've been doing. I don't know, I'm sure folks on the call know this, but the FAST Act, or Surface Transportation Reauthorization that we're working on, that work continues. And so does the work on the Water Resources Development, or WRDA Act. We're continuing work on those things as well. So I think it's really important to make sure that folks know that infrastructure is definitely being included in the conversations as we go forward, looking at the next set of relief packages and legislation that we need to reauthorize anyway.
I appreciate that. And I'd be remiss in saying, as you were answering that, somebody else pointed out that broadband should certainly be considered as part of, infrastructure. And I didn't mention that early on. So,
yeah.
Next question is, what's going on at the federal level to help businesses in terms of training and for essential workers and meeting workforce demand?
So one of the things that I want to, well, first of all, I appreciate that question. I think that right now in this time of economic uncertainty, certainly for the folks who are either being furloughed or losing their jobs, we're going to see, I just think that we have to be cognizant of the need to keep people up to date with their training, and also make sure that folks know where to access jobs and let people know about jobs when we get back into the economic recovery. So the CARES Act was really focused on trying to make sure that we're able to keep folks employed through things like the Paycheck Protection Program. And I think that is it's a big piece of making sure that our workforce is able to be maintained to the extent possible. But I also know that that's not enough. So one of the things that we've done in my office is I've been speaking with, like the Kansas City, Kansas Community College has technical training and that sort of thing that they've got. Johnson County Community College, KU, where we've been talking to the different institutions here that help keep our workforce trained up. And, they're trying to get really creative about the ways that they make sure that people are able to continue their learning. And that folks are able to come back and learn if they're in a position to do that when all of this is said and done. So I think that us and Congress making sure that there's resources available so that our institutions are able to keep people trained, and then also making sure that some of the folks who do training, like our unions and that kind of thing, with the apprenticeship programs, are still able to do that. I also think that one of the things that we're starting to see is moving production lines and that sort of thing to personal protective equipment here in this area. And I'm sure you all already know this, so I'm preaching to the choir, but we've got a lot of actually like biosciences expertise and companies that are, in fact, there's a number of companies right here in our district who are actually able to have a positive impact across the country as we look at the development of testing and all the materials that we need around that stuff. So I've been trying to figure out ways to make sure that we're supporting those kind of businesses, because they're having to scale up, and as folks are getting laid off or furloughed, if they've got a skill set that might be able to come in handy during all of this, we're also trying to help connect those dots for folks as well.
Okay, thank you. Next question relates to testing and some of the challenges that Kansas has had in getting maybe some of that support from the federal government. Can you address that?
First, I want to say how frustrated I've been. I mean, I like the lack of testing has been so frustrating, partly because the number of tests that we've given, considering the number of people that we have in this in the 3rd district, and of course, I'm obviously going to advocate at the federal level to get resources to Kansas, and as the place where we've seen the most cases, with Johnson and Wyandotte County combined making up a lot of the cases in the state, I've been pushing really hard to get testing, PPE or personal protective equipment to our specific region really hard. One of the things that we see is that the national testing strategy just has not been there. But one of the things we got into the last package was $25 billion was allocated in that last package for a national testing strategy and the resources to actually ramp up those tests. We've seen an increase in here. I know that there's been a couple of pop-up testing sites that we've seen from our health departments, from some of the, KU Med or Vibrant Health, which is in Wyandotte County, but we've seen some of the pop-up testing or drive-up testing, I should say. We're going to see more and more of that over the coming weeks, but certainly it's been so frustrating to see that there just wasn't a national testing strategy, and I think that the widespread national testing strategy is going to have an impact. And a state like Kansas should be competing against other states like California or New York to try to get the testing supplies that we need. And that was something that we saw there for a little while. It's been frustrating.
Changing gears rather dramatically, the question is, would you support a bill that provides temporary federal support to city and state budgets? And what do you think about that?
I'm glad you're asking. Hold on, I'm writing it down so I can make sure that I don't get off track. So I do think that we should be looking at ways to support our state and local budgets. The federal government of course, has different requirements and that sort of thing for our budgeting process than our states do. And I think here in Kansas, we're in a unique position to see that everything is impacted when we're not able to invest in things like our infrastructure, roads, our wastewater, our education system. And so I think that Kansas is in a place where we're just now starting to recover from the Great Recession. The tax policies that we saw under a previous governor, and the cuts to our public schools and roads and that sort of thing is something that we were just now coming out of. But I think that this pandemic is the potential is there to cause such economic devastation for our state. That I think that we need to, we in Congress need to help ensure that our state and local governments receive direct, flexible aid in the next response package so that we can continue to have a strong public education system, infrastructure, and healthcare, because our Kansas community, our families depend on these things.
I have one more question that was pre-submitted, and we're starting to get some that are populating in our chat box. And so I'm going to give a heads up to those folks that have sent those questions in. I'm going to call on you shortly to kind of restate your question directly so that you don't have to listen to me anymore. But the last question I had pre-submitted is probably one that's more applicable to local and state jurisdiction. But I'll ask it to you in a broader frame of reference, and that is, we've been hearing a lot from massage therapists and other folks in the personal care industry that they're really concerned about contact and all that type of thing. Are there any industry-specific things that you guys are doing at the federal level to help specific industries and that might be particularly vulnerable?
So I'll answer. So I feel like I have like two parts of an answer for that. One is that up to this point, the primary way that the conversations have been framed around getting relief to our small business owners has been less sector specific and more focused on the truly getting to the like mom and pop small business, not the, this SBA definition of small business, such as like if you have under $1 billion or something. I think that part of the reason we haven't seen a ton of sector specific in terms of things like the Paycheck Protection Program is because of that. We've been having the conversation around just the actual like size of the businesses, but I have been hearing more and more from, I was talking to the Bonner Springs and Edwardsville chamber folks the other day, and they brought up massage therapists and hairdressers, barbers, folks that actually, from what I heard, were feeling so frustrated because it almost felt like a poke in the eye to get if they were able to access the Paycheck Protection Program, it was like such a small dollar amount. And I think that one of the things that we have to be really cognizant of, and I was actually hoping if some folks could reach out to our office who are dealing with this from these specific sectors, because I do think that as we start to go forward, we maybe should start looking at ways of addressing some of the specific needs that we're seeing, because certainly a small IT business is different than a small a different kind of service business, or an in-person service business, or something like a massage or cosmetology type of business. And so I think that would this raises a really big issue. I would love to hear from, and then I don't know if you all would be able to, I feel like I need to look here. If you all would be able to get some information over to us about what it's been like, I just would very much welcome that.
We would be happy to work with your office on that. Your staff has been wonderful in the questions that have come up, and we'll get some information to you. I want to turn it over to Laura Laban. I know she's had some specific challenges that she wants to bring up with you. So Laura, are you there and ready?
I am. Thank you. Thanks so much, Representative Davids. It's nice to meet you virtually here. I own the Culinary Center of Kansas City, right around the corner here from you. And I think that I represent a lot of people and this particular issue as it relates to the calculation of the forgiveness portion of the PPP.
Mm-hmm.
I would represent, I have about 30 employees plus a successful business that obviously has been impacted by this greatly. We are completely, our business model is completely reliant on the gathering of people. And obviously we're under an order. I was lucky to get the PPP funds on the first go round. I'm very grateful for that. I've been working with Landmark Bank.
Oh, okay.
And,
I was going to ask.
Yeah, and I do understand completely the concept that it's designed to get people back to work. So I don't want to appear ungrateful at all for that. The problem is that there are certain aspects of this that operate as a noose around the neck of small businesses. And I want to explain that, and I'll try to do it briefly, and then maybe we can talk another time. And it relates to that 8-week rule. So on the date of origination, I've practiced law for about 18 years, so I know how to read laws. But when I first was going to get the loan, I heard about it. I said, can I choose the origination date? Because we're currently under an order. And my business is like a restaurant in that it is completely focused on gathering of people, so we can't open in that way. And Landmark Bank said, no, you can't choose the origination date. So I have April 13th. So I am being judged by the 8 weeks, which ends June 9th or 10th or 11th, something like that. During that time, I'm not able to open, but I'm supposed to use 75% of those funds for payroll. Add to that the fact that the unemployment situation where the folks are really making a lot of dollars on unemployment, which I understand, and that's fabulous too for them. But it really puts a noose around the neck of people like this, like myself, because if I am not able to qualify for that forgiveness, I will have a loan on a business that didn't have any loan prior, that was doing fine, albeit a 1% loan, and I totally get that. But my bottom line is there any way that we can extend the 8-week period of time, or at least give some of us the ability to go in and make a case for the fact that there's no way we can get the benefit of that PPP loan money that you want to get out so badly to the people, and I'm on your side on that one for sure. It really is a rock and a hard place. The calculations are highly complicated. Mm-hmm. And I'm a finance major too, and I'm not saying that to be all that. I'm saying this is hard. this is hard, and I'm not sure how to handle this because I don't know what the other side of this looks like for me or for businesses like me.
Yeah.
That's
So,
a long question, sorry.
no, well, I mean, I think from the conversations that I've been having with my colleagues, I have a feeling that you're probably not the only person who's thinking about this. So I'm glad you brought it up. And I will say that there has been, so we had it was probably a test run. They were using us as the guinea pigs. I don't know if I'm supposed to say it. But we did a test run on a small business hearing during my trip back to DC last week. Wore masks and gloves and all the things, but one of the purposes of that was to talk about the issues that we were seeing. And because I got the chance to have conversations with my colleagues, there were at least 2 other members who literally brought this up in testimony. So it's in the congressional record, which is one thing, but I can tell you that this concept of the origination date, either flexibility in the origination date or more clarity around how we can make sure that people don't essentially run afoul or of the forgiveness portion, because I do think that what you just said is actually a really great synopsis of one of the bigger problems that folks who are able to secure the funding, like one of the biggest problems that they're facing, which is how do we decide whether or not to go for the Paycheck Protection Program if we don't know if we're going to be able to qualify for forgiveness.
Exactly.
And we don't know how long these, it's not just the stay-at-home directives, it's also, I mean, I know it's not as if our small business owners are saying the only reason I am doing this is because of a stay-at-home directive. People want to be safe. And I think that, you know, the flexibility is probably the place where I could see some movement happening, either around the origination date or additional guidance on how people can make sure that they can qualify where it was clearly intended that, you know, a small business is able to qualify for the forgiveness portion. I would like for us, if we could have a follow-up conversation about this when we're looking at future packages. I do think the idea of how we make sure that people are eligible for the forgiveness portion, especially when you're in a circumstance that you can't control the stay-at-home directives or the ability to keep folks safe when we don't know how long this pandemic is going to, you know. And everywhere has different metrics too about what's considered the right number of people, and you know, is it 2 weeks that we see a downward trend? And I think all of those pieces are really important, and I would push for more flexibility in the Paycheck Protection Program around that piece of it.
I think it's going to be the difference between whether a lot of businesses fail or survive. I really do. I think it can go down to that very concept. I feel really strongly about it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to turn to Julie Anderson to ask the next question of you, Congresswoman. Julie, it's all yours.
Right. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Representative Davids, for taking my question. We are an HR consulting firm in Overland Park and have a number of clients who have either furloughed or laid off their employees who are now experiencing, and Laura had kind of alluded to this a little bit, experiencing their income is in their favor with the unemployment benefit and the $600 weekly boost. And so what we're starting to see with this return to work and potential furloughed individuals being asked to come back, and even those who've been laid off being asked to return to their jobs or being presented with their jobs, a reluctance to return. And I understand, when they fill out their weekly questions, you understand the question 13, did you look for work, is not being required, although I think there's a question around, did you refuse work? So hopefully that should work itself out. But any comments around those who are earning more on unemployment than coming back into the workplace? We've got clients who are worried they're going to lose some good talent, and it's a short-term thing, but.
Well, so there's a couple of things. It's interesting because I think here in Kansas, it could be that you see more people who are with the additional $600 end up seeing more unemployment than they might get if they were working a close to full-time job or something. But it's interesting that you bring this up, because the thing that I had heard more of was that people in other places were mad because they felt like the number wasn't high enough. But I think that was because, if you live in like New York City or something, it's the amount didn't seem like it was even high enough. Yeah, I'll have to think more about and hear from more business owners. So I don't know if you'd be willing to have a kind of a longer phone conversation with me about this, or a couple of business owners who are in this position, because I think it would be it feels like something that I really need to get in and dig into a bit, hear more about.
I'd be happy to talk with you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Starting to kind of get to light, return to work. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. And then I think I might have. Sorry, I'm trying to I don't know how to do this. This seems so. Am I? Oh.
Kevin.
No, I was muted. I was looking at questions and not looking at my microphone.
Oh, I keep these. I think I have a couple more minutes. I'm starting to get the things popping up. I'm hoping that they're not super loud on that end.
Well, we're going to move you into the lightning round, and then we'll have some other questions we won't have time for, and we'll get with you and your staff on those, and so we can get some answers to those as well. I'm going to transition to Trish Reedy for our next and maybe our last question.
Hi. Sorry if my little assistants were a bit of a distraction a moment ago.
Oh,
when
no.
there's no school and no daycare, you got to do what you can do, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm a mortgage lender, and I appreciate the ability to put your loans into forbearance if you're having trouble making your payments if you've been laid off. But since there is no requirement to prove inability to pay, anyone can submit for forbearance. And I've had several clients in the middle of refinancing their loan with me saying, well, hey, why don't I just go ahead and do forbearance? And that's causing a lot of difficulty, in the whole wave of the big banks all the way down to us little guys. If there was some sort of requirement to prove loss of income or inability to pay in order to qualify for forbearance, that would make things go a lot smoother. Right now, I couldn't write a VA loan if I wanted to, because no servicer wants to take on the risk of 100% financing when there's a good chance that borrower is going to go straight into forbearance. I feel like that piece wasn't fully thought out. So just a little food for thought, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought it up. So one of the things, I think one of the, as we start to move forward with additional loan, I was going to say loan packages, with additional coronavirus legislation, related legislation. I do think one of the things that we might start seeing more of, so I'm like, full disclosure, I fight for priorities and that sort of thing. A lot of the negotiations happen at the leadership level. And, you know, I'm constantly pushing for things. But one of the things that I think is that we saw in the last few packages was that, you know, we passed the first package and then very quickly saw that it was not sufficient. Then the second package came and very quickly we saw again it was not sufficient. And so I think that the issue that you're talking about is one of those things that happens when massive pieces of legislation are moving really quickly. But also hearing from you about this is one of the ways that we can try to figure out how, I mean, because certainly it doesn't feel fair for someone who's been laid off, or they've seen their revenue for their business that they own drop significantly, to be treated with the same, you know, whether it's forbearance or access to loans as a massive corporation, or you know, folks who actually don't need access to the programs. It doesn't feel fair. And so I think that's a really great point that you bring up. And as we look at some of these programs going forward, that'll be something I keep my eye out for. Oh, Kevin, I think you're muted again.
Congresswoman, thank you very much. I know you've got a tight schedule to keep. We appreciate you giving an hour of your time with us. I've had a few more questions come in. We'll get with your staff and try to get answers to those questions, and we'll get those out to the folks that have asked them. For the others, if anything comes to mind, I know her office and her staff are readily available to constituents. We certainly can help if there's anything we can do. And so with that, I'll wish everybody a great afternoon. And I know Clint Robinson has reminded us it's a Chamber of Commerce day outside. So maybe go get a walk in and enjoy that while you can. Thank you all very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. This was fun. I mean, the Zoom aspect.
Great.
Well, we're
Thank you
glad
very
it worked
much.
out, and thank you for doing it. I know you've got a lot on your plate.
Thank you. You all
It's
do
great to see
too.
you.
Good to see you.